For GMAT prep, it took about 2 months from the time that I bought my GMAT prep book until the time that I wrote it, which was about reading week back in February of my last year of undergraduate degree. Although I like to say that I studied for the entirety of 2 months, I believe that in total it's probably 1 month studying that it was very consistent, especially the week leading up to it. The resources that I used was the official GMAT prep book, which is by GMAT, and also an app called For GMAT that you can download on Android or iPhone. And it was nice because it set daily reminders for myself, and I could kind of gauge what my score would be on the actual GMAT test.
Studying for the GMAT is definitely a daunting experience to start off with, especially not knowing anyone else who had done the GMAT. And like many other standardized tests, there are tons of resources available to you, which makes things at times a bit more difficult than they need to be. My personal strategy was to stick to the official guide questions, which are through their textbook, their online application that you get from their website, and I also purchased additional GMAT exams directly through their website, which feed through their online application. And I found that that was the best way for me because I knew all the questions were legitimate and had that they came all from previous exams. So it was great for me having that consolation, knowing that these questions were relevant in studying. I also set up an Excel sheet where I tracked what type of question and how long it took me to do each question. So for quant, you know there's going to be a certain amount of questions, so you know how much time you have for each question. And if I was outside of the time limit for a certain type of question, I would make sure to spend more time speeding up the process and evaluating them. Another thing that really helped me was getting part of online communities where the official guide questions are great, but sometimes their explanations aren't the way that I would have approached the question. And seeing online through different forums, you can find people's alternate solutions that might be more attuned to the way that you would want to answer a question and that it makes sense to you. So those were two of my biggest takeaways, were to stick to official guide and set up a way to track so that you know where you need to spend more time and effort. And lastly is make sure you spend your time also on verbal, where English is my first language, but there are a lot of rules that you should look into so that you know with certainty you're getting questions right on the GMAT. Finally, when you're doing the exam and you're seeing hard questions, that's a good thing because it is computer adaptive. So that means that you're doing well on the questions so that you can keep moving up in those rankings for the scale at the end.
Personally, when I was studying, I found that the best method that worked for me was to first do a bit of research in terms of which product is going to work best for you if you decide to use some sort of guide or prep course. I read a bunch of different reviews and tried to pick a product that would work best for me. I had been out of school for a few years at that point, so I really wanted a product that had an in-class session so that I can get that one-on-one attention from a professor. I found that worked really well for me. Additionally, I think it's really important that students or people looking to write the GMAT test pick a day ahead of time. The first time I wrote, I kind of just kept telling myself that I'd be ready eventually, and I found that I prolonged my study process longer than what I would have liked. So my first tip would be to pick a day, typically maybe around 3 to 4 months out, and then create your study guide in relation to that date. Also, I wrote the GMAT twice, and the first time I wrote, I focused really on doing a lot of quantitative prep because I knew that's where I lacked more. But with that being said, you know, I'd study for 3-4 days in a row, heavy on quant, and sometimes it would be almost a week before I even looked at the qualitative section. And I think that did me a disservice. So the second time I decided to write, I really tried to integrate both. So I may say today I'm really going to focus on quant, but I still would devote, you know, at least maybe half an hour, 45 minutes on some qualitative sections. And the last thing I would say is to find a study schedule and a study plan that works for you. Some people only need to spend 2 to 3 weeks studying, whereas others may need 4 or 5 months. With that said, I would really try and keep it within a 3 to 4 month time frame, just because anything longer than that, again, depending on your learning style, anything that you do review at the beginning of that 3 month, 4 month, 5 month time frame, you may lose. And preparing for the GMAT is really about repetition, just getting exposure to the different types of questions and being able to recognize what's really being asked of you. So if you can just do your best to keep that momentum going, and try and devote a little bit of time every single day for a shorter period of time, I think that's where you'll see your most success.